Today it's all about maximizing productivity in a small space for farmers because this is what makes you profitable. This is the difference between failing and succeeding. More on that coming up on Modern Grower. Hello growers, I'm Diego, D-I-E-G-O, and for the past 10 years I've done hundreds and hundreds of podcasts talking to farmers all across the world. Along the way, I've learned a ton, and my goal is to share what I've learned from them in these videos for you. I'm trying to distill down all that knowledge and make it really digestible. They're typically long videos. If long videos aren't your things, well, either speed them up or go somewhere else. But this one is all about high yield per square foot as we continue our crop value rating series. We're now on criterion number 2. To give you a short little recap on what the crop value rating system is, this is a system that was named by farmer Curtis Stone. He took a lot of strategies that he was using and market gardeners were using and created this system called the crop value rating system that has 5 separate criteria in it. And when you're evaluating what crops you should grow for your farm, you look at these 5 criteria. And every crop that satisfies a certain criterion gets 1 point. And ideally, crops with 5 points are the best crops to grow. So today we're continuing on with criterion 2. If you missed number 1, go back. The TLDR version of this one is you want the highest possible yield per linear foot of garden space. If you want to end the video here, then go on your way. That's what you want to do though. Get the highest possible yield per linear foot of bed space. This is crucial because gardeners, market gardeners, don't have unlimited space. If you want to make more money, if you want to make a living, you need to get as much money out of that land as possible. In order to get as much money out of the land as possible, you have to sell as much as you can off that land. So obviously, crops that produce more stuff to sell are better than crops that produce less stuff to sell, assuming market prices, profitability, costs, all that's relatively equal, and for the most part, it is in market gardening. And we're talking about, in this video, the yield per linear foot of bed space. For people who don't know what that means, all right, here's your typical market garden bed. It's long, it's usually 30 inches wide. So every foot we go up the bed, we can measure that yield. So from 0 to 1, we get some harvest unit. From 1 foot to 2 foot, we get a harvest unit. And then obviously over the full 100 feet, we get a harvest unit. Easy way to figure this out. How much did I harvest off a 100-foot bed? Divide it by 100. I got 2 pounds per foot, half a pound per foot. So you can start to compare these metrics over time. This allows us to get the most value that we can out of our land, which is critically important. The benefits of this system, there's several. 1, you increase productivity. That's obvious, right? The more you can grow per square foot, the more you can grow across the total land base. It's economically efficient. Higher yields lead to more revenue. This allows you to get more diversity into the farm, potentially, because if I can squeeze a lot of one crop into one bed, then I have another bed free to grow something else. This reduces risk. It allows me to utilize resources efficiently because it's really not that much harder to, say, weed a bed that has 800 cloves of garlic in it than one that has 500. I'm probably going to spend the same amount of time weeding that bed. I'm going to spend the same amount of time preparing that bed, watering that bed, fertilizing the bed. You get the idea. So the more crop I can put in a bed, I'm just spreading out my costs further amongst every single harvest unit that comes out of that bed. So this, because their costs, again, they don't go up. outside of seed relative to what we're growing in the bed. So this gives us a way to spread that out. And this can be kind of sustainable because it reduces the need to get more land. I'm a big proponent of more land does not always mean more profit. I think people want more land because they just want more land. But more land comes with a lot of complexity. If you really focus on the land you have and try and maximize production on it, you can probably get a lot more out of it than you currently are. And maximizing yield per square foot, per linear foot, is one way of maximizing efficiency. So how can we do that? Here's some techniques, and we'll talk about these techniques in a future video, but these are just some of the ways that we're going to look at doing this. Primarily, it's selecting crops with high yields, which is number 5 up here, but you can go vertical. That's one way. If my bed runs this way horizontally, well, if I can start going up in the vertical space, that's more space efficient. That's why we started building skyscrapers in cities like Chicago in the late 1800s. We realized with the same footprint, we could just stack houses on top of each other, and suddenly we can fit way more people in the same amount of space. Hey, look at New York City. Not where I would want to live, but it's space efficient. You can intercrop. So you could plant 2 crops next to each other that could be stacked. Either you could have a tall crop with a short crop growing next to it. You could have a crop that grows quickly with a crop that grows slowly. And then the crop that grows quick comes out, and the crop that grows slowly takes its place and matures. There's all sorts of strategies for intercropping, which we can talk about in a future video. You could have high density planting. This is one way. So instead of just planting crops every 12 inches on 12-inch beds, so we'd have a 12-inch grid, 12 inches in row and 12 inches between row. We could say, well, what if we just shorten this down to 6 inches between each crop? Shorten it this way, shorten it this way. Now we get twice the yield out of the same amount of space. That might affect things like crop size or disease, but we can do those types of experiments to play around to see what is our optimum planting density. You see that a lot in microgreens. Microgreens are all about optimizing density for your growing conditions. Some farmers might grow with 30 grams of broccoli in a 10-20 tray, and other farmers might do 20. What types of results are you getting? Maybe you can dial back, save seed, and get the same results. Maybe you can increase seed usage and get more crop. So these are things to think about. And then you're going to select crops that have high yields. So if you have a choice, this is the rule. This is, underline this part if you're taking notes. This is like the call out part of the video. If you have a choice and the market is indifferent, it's better to choose a higher yielding variety over a lower yielding one. This could apply to a crop, meaning you could choose radish over squash. Radish is going to yield more per linear foot than squash will. Or you could choose a higher yielding variety over a lower yielding one, meaning one variety of lettuce produces more than another variety of lettuce. So again, in a perfect world, if the market is indifferent, choose the higher yielding variety, either the higher yielding crop or the variety of that crop that produces more. Here are some considerations for crop selection when we're looking at high yield per linear foot. The growth rate, we want something that can grow fast. We want vertical growth potential. We want market demand, obviously, and it's got to be suited to our local climate. To help bring this message home, let's look at some comparisons of crop yields, because this is where the numbers really tell the full story. And I'm going to have to look down here because there's a lot of numbers. I don't have all this memorized. If you look at number 1 right up here, you'll see cabbage. That's a low yield per linear foot crop. It takes 180 to 100 days to mature, and you can get about $30 of revenue out of it using this example. If we compare that to radishes, you can get a high yield linear crop. They're ready in 30 days, and the yield per 10 feet is $24 to $30. But we can grow 3 times as many radishes over that time period as we can cabbage. So you get one cabbage harvest that we can sell for $30 for our 10 feet over 80 to 100 days. Or over that same 80 to 100 days, we can get 3 radish crops that we could sell for $100 to $75 to $100. Cherry tomatoes, high yield per linear foot. Takes 60 to 70 days to first harvest, and then it becomes a continuous harvest for a very long period of time. And your revenue per foot revenue per 10 feet is very high. I did 10 feet in this example just because the numbers get really small if you try and do it on a per square foot basis. But you can do this however you want in Google Sheets. Lettuce, another common high yielding crop. So revenue per 10 linear feet, $156. Pole beans versus bush beans. Bush beans are something that you have to go horizontal with. Pole beans go higher. You can see the yield difference when you go vertical. So you can take some time to study these numbers, pause the video and look at them. But these are the examples that show, all right, if we have a choice and the market says, we'll buy whatever you grow. You can grow radishes or cabbage. One cabbage harvest over 3 months brings in $30 per 10 feet. 3 radish harvests per 3 months, over 3 months, brings in $90. So a big difference. You're getting more yield. You're also getting more crop rotations. Let's say you were doing the cabbage example. Maybe you find that I could grow these mega huge cabbages, or I could grow baby cabbages, and I could put more baby cabbages in the same amount of space, and really I come ahead on weight. This is always the trade-off, right? Do I want a crop that takes a long time to grow and grows really big? But maybe I can get ahead, get more yield per given area by just planting a more dwarf variety, and I get more total units that add up to a greater sellable product weight. And oftentimes that's what people want. People don't want, a 20-pound cabbage. They'd much rather have a 2-pound cabbage. So these comparisons clearly demonstrate how significantly high yield crops can increase productivity in a limited space. Here's a hypothetical example for an urban market garden with 1,000 square feet of growing space. You could grow crops, tomatoes, peppers, and squash. These are low density crops. You're not going to get a lot of yield relative to the space that they take up. Get 1,500 pounds of produce out of it over the course of a year. You can sell it for $4,500, assuming you sold it all for $3 a pound. It's a very conservative average price for vegetables. Compare that to a high yield approach where you grow salad greens, cherry tomatoes, microgreens, and vertical cucumber on the same amount of land. Get 3,000 pounds of produce, twice as much. Your revenue is $15,000, and you can probably sell those crops for a little higher because they're more niche. So when you think about crops you want to grow, consider what we talked about in the previous video, which was short days to maturity, but also think about high yielding. And if your crop that you're looking at online or in your seed catalog checks both those boxes, they get 2 points so far. So focus on high yield per linear foot and maximize the value of the limited amount of space that you have. It doesn't work for everybody, but it gives you some way to get started. That's the whole goal here. I'm not saying you can only grow these types of crops. I'm trying to help you narrow it down. I'm trying to help you rein in on your wild gardener, tree hugging hippie fantasies of wanting to grow everything like quinoa and tomatillos and edamame. We're not growing all that stuff. We need to grow what works for the business to start with, and then we can add on some wild stuff later on. So use this to rein yourself in and give yourself a starting point and try and use it to bring some rationality to the conversation. It's not all about what you want to grow or what you could grow. Sometimes it's about what's most profitable or what makes the most sense to grow in this specific type of farm business model. We're talking small scale, human scale, market farming here. This isn't tractor culture. This isn't large scale farming. That's all different economics. This is small scale, urban, suburban, rural, market gardening. I hope this makes sense. If you have questions or comments, leave them below. I'd be happy to answer them. If there's topics in this video you want me to expand more on, let me know. If you want to learn more about the CVR, check out Curtis Stone's book, The Urban Farmer. You can listen to that book on Audible or wherever audiobooks are found. I narrated the book, so you can hear me read it to you. And I appreciate all the likes, comments, subscriptions. If you enjoy it, subscribe. Come back more. We have a lot of videos on this channel by me and some of my colleagues here at Modern Grower. If you ever need gardening supplies, farm supplies, seeds, please be sure to check out our website at shop.moderngrower.co. Thank you for watching. As always, be nice, be thankful, and do the work.